quick, what's the best streaming device? Yeah, that's nice, but what if I only want to spend 20 bucks and I don't want anything locked down? Yeah, but it's not all bad. I know we did that video recently warning about the dangers of cheap infected Android TV boxes, but there are some valid options for streaming your content even on a super tight budget. The problem is that it can be really confusing. While many of these boxes are, at least on paper, largely the same SoC, same RAM, same storage, same remotes, that doesn't necessarily mean that they all feel or function the same. Some of them are 4K, others are only 1080p. Some have Dolby Vision and Atmos, while others only have HDR10. Some run a stock software experience, while others are customized. So to separate the wheat from the chaff, we bought a bucket load of devices ranging from about $100 down to one really amazing option that is just 20 bucks. We've got the usual suspects like Google and Amazon, and we've got the less usual suspects like Xiaomi, Walmart, and TiVo. TiVo is still around? As it turns out, yeah, sort of. And you know who else is still around? The king of segues. To our sponsor, Ugreen. Your laptop deserves access to all your peripherals, and Ugreen can help with their RevoDock Pro 210. You can let your laptop cuddle with up to 10 devices while staying cozy under the blankets with pass-through charging of up to 85 watts. Check it out at the link down below. While some folks took issue with our last video on this subject, I stand behind our complaints. If you search for Android TV Box on Amazon and buy a random result from the first page, there is a solid 80% chance that you're gonna end up with something of questionable quality and possibly loaded with malware. But these commenters did raise some valid points. Telling folks what not to buy is only half a video. So here's the rest of it, starting with the most mainstream option. Out of the box, the Chromecast with Google TV is easy to set up and easy to use, and also surely devoid of any nefarious spyware. That is, other than the usual. The HD version's Amlogic S805X2 processor and 1.5 gigs of LPDDR4 RAM seem to be mostly sufficient for it to function as well as a $30 device should, and 1080p video playback is smooth, with lag and stutters being a rare occurrence, at least out of the box. It can play back AV1, has Dolby Atmos pass-through, and Dolby Digital Plus, and again, can't stress this enough, it only costs $30. It's even powerful enough to play Donkey Kong 64 on Mupen with the correct accessories. If it could play back 4K video, it would probably be our winner, but it can't. So let's move on to the slightly older, slightly more expensive, and slightly more powerful Chromecast 4K. Unlike its younger HD sibling, it doesn't support AV1, but what it does support is Dolby Vision in addition to Dolby Digital Plus, and as advertised, it plays back 4K video without much issue. Both of them use identical remotes, offering HDMI CEC connection if you want to use it to control your other devices, or if you want to use your other device's remotes to control the Chromecast, along with reasonable IR integration with TVs and soundbars to fill in the gaps. Voice commands through the built-in mic are picked up decently, and it integrates with the Google Assistant and Home Assistant. Power is provided through the included Type A 7.5 watt charger. That's gotta be there because it's more than your TV's built-in USB port can probably provide. And if you want Ethernet, Google sells a replacement for the wall wart with an integrated 1000 Ethernet jack for 20 bucks. Though I wouldn't recommend buying that. If you want to get the most out of these things, a C2C charger capable of at least 30 watts is totally the way to go. Why? Because when combined with a Type-C dongle with PD pass-through, you can add external storage, peripherals, and faster gigabit Ethernet for those legit Blu-ray rips on your Plex or your Jellyfin server. Though it should be noted there are some caveats. You see, long before Apple made it cool, Google only wired up this Type-C port for USB 2.0. That means a hard transfer rate limit of 480 megabits per second. So if you were to, say for example, download a file to an external hard drive, you might find yourself running into a bit of a bottleneck. And that won't even be the least of your troubles. Both the HD and the 4K versions ship with only 4.4 gigabytes of available eMMC storage. So if you're into plundering or tinkering, that will get full at some point, and that will slow your Chromecast to a crawl. It's pretty easy to transfer apps over to external storage, so that's good, but that storage must be formatted as an encrypted Android partition for apps, or FAT32 for standard external storage, which limits you to, that's right, 4 GB file sizes or smaller. Yar. Overall though, if you like the Google TV interface over top of Android, the Chromecast is still great, even if it's a little warty. But great is not enough to get our recommendation today. Google certifies plenty of third-party devices running Android TV or Google TV, and not all of them are sketchy. The hard part is just finding them. You see, an official list is available, but it requires you to be part of the Google Play Developer Program, a process that requires Google to manually approve your account, which they will only do after you have paid them $25. Thankfully, sites like AndroidTVGuide.com do exist, and they frequently scrape the list from the developer API and post their findings, often in a much more readable and searchable format. Which is what led us to this little nugget from Walmart house brand ONN of all people. It's manufactured by SDMC, a common OEM of Google certified devices, and Walmart is somehow selling this thing for $20. That's not on sale, just an everyday low price. Now, is it missing some features compared to Google's $50 4K Chromecast? Sure, but it supports 4K video, has Dolby Audio and HDR10, which, if you think about it, are kind of like the $20 versions of Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision. And oh, right, it also has AV1 support. Now, performance-wise, it is noticeably less smooth than the Chromecast 4K, but it's a slight enough difference that if you weren't using them side by side, you probably wouldn't be able to tell, which makes sense since internally it has the same amount of RAM and storage and a very similar class of processor. I could say a lot more about this thing. So I will, because we actually really like it. It offers up the same Google TV experience that we've come to know and mostly love, and it ships with the same generic Streambox remote that we've come to tolerate or even kind of like. The mic works okay, and it comes with a handful more buttons than the first-party Google variant. I personally don't subscribe to Paramount Plus, but hey, these can be easily remapped using third-party software from the Google Play Store. Speaking of which, we talked before about wanting a device for our money that's not locked down. As we discussed in our sketchy streaming box video, one of the major draws of those devices is the ease with which users can engage in content piracy. And while the ONN unit doesn't come rooted or anything like that, which can be good for installing whatever you want on it, but definitely has downsides, unlike an Apple TV, it does allow unofficial apps to be sideloaded onto it, meaning that you can load up all kinds of software. Everything from Syncler, which is a handy tool for consolidating online content libraries, to SmartTube, which is an alternative to the YouTube app. Now, to be clear, I'm not advocating for the use of any of these things. I think I've been clear enough in my position that I consider circumvention of ads for ad-supported content to be circumvention of payment for the said content and the people who created it. But I'm also not naive enough to think that you guys aren't doing it, and I would much rather you do it with a certified device that doesn't spy on you any more than Google would. So overall, ONN is our value king, but we're actually not done yet. What do you get for 3.75 times the price? Why, the mecool, KD3. It looks totally different from the ONN, but inside it is actually the exact same hardware, and it even ships with the same remote. Wait, how is this $75? Look at this. If we look it up on Android TV Guide, we can see this model, originally made by Skyworth, is being sold as Cosmedia in Turkey, Regza in Japan, and Skyworth in Shein. What, you've never heard of Shein? Small textile nation. Their primary export is clothing that lasts only 3 washes. Anyway, sorry. If you see this thing for more than what you would pay for the Walmart version, I probably wouldn't bother unless you live outside of the US, which, oh, crap, that's me. Well, okay, you can pay a little bit more than the Walmart version, but I'd say anything over $40 is not gonna be a very good deal. And even at $40, the competition heats up significantly in that price range. Take, for example, the $40 TiVo Stream 4K made by SEI Robotics. This is a little different from the others, not only because it's running Android TV without Google TV, but also because TiVo opted for their own UI, their own remote design, and the inclusion of a USB-C port that is separate from the micro USB port that they're using for power. That's something that even identical devices with the same manufacturer and part number don't do. The UI is TiVo's own aggregator for different streaming services and live TV replacements, running as an app over top of stock Android TV. It's a pretty interesting concept, actually, but between being limited to the major US streaming services and generally being a tad bit unstable, it's not that great in practice. And TiVo seems to agree, as Xperi CEO John Kirshner said in an earnings call 2 years ago that TiVo was not going to make another Android TV streaming devices. Since then, they've lost integration with Sling TV, experienced a day where new users lost the ability to set up devices due to server maintenance issues, and they've announced a new Smart TV OS in partnership with European TV manufacturer Vestel, all of which is fine, I guess, since no one's forcing you to use their crappy overlay or the integrations anyway. Spec-wise, it's nothing to write home about. The lack of AV1 decoding is a bit of a bummer, or at least it will be in the future, but it does include support for Dolby Atmos and Vision, something that the mecool lacks, and it has a super cool remote. One benefit of their attempt to emulate cable TV is that it's full of number buttons, all of which are completely remappable with button mapper apps, meaning that you can have quick launches for every questionable thing you could ever consider sideloading onto this device. The only real downside is it's stuck on Android 10, is what I would say. But as it turns out, if you're looking to run certain things, like emulators for example, that could be a good thing. Starting with Android TV 11, Google removed the included file explorer and began forcing scoped storage, a system that compartmentalizes files by type and what application put them there. This can create some big issues if you do things incorrectly. Like for example, if you install PPS-SPP from the Play Store and then use something like send file to TV to transfer a ROM to the internal storage, you could find yourself unable to access your ISO from the emulator, and more troublingly, unable to delete the ISO at all because it doesn't fit into Google's predefined list of file types that apps are allowed to delete. So if that ROM is 1.1 gigs, which would be a perfectly reasonable size for a PSP game, that's a quarter of your 4.4 gigs gone forever, unless you use a third-party app to go manually reclaim it. With that said, if up-to-date software is important to you, but only sort of, and you're a big fan of non-functional custom UIs, this is not your only option. Xiaomi offers the TV Stick 4K for just $65. It comes with Xiaomi's Patchwall and Patchwall Plus apps pre-installed. What does that mean? We don't know. Apparently it has something to do with free live TV, similar to Pluto, but Xiaomi seemingly offers no comprehensive list of what regions Patchwall works in. We assume China, and it apparently works in India, but we're hard-pressed to find anywhere else and hard-pressed to test it, which wouldn't be that big of a deal, except that the button to launch Patchwall is in the same place that every other Android and Google TV device puts the back button. Button remapping, you guys, is supposed to be a fun little additional feature, not a mandatory exercise. Specs-wise, it's yet another Y4 with 2 gigs of RAM and 8 gigs of storage, just like the mecool and the Walmart devices, and it functions about the same as those options, but with the addition of both Dolby Atmos and Vision. So it has that going for it, which is nice, but I still can't really recommend it in a world where the TiVo and the Chromecast 4K exist. And I'd probably say the same about the newest Xiaomi TV box, the TV Box S 2nd Gen. This one's on a slightly more powerful X4 processor, so that's a good thing. It supports Atmos and Dolby Vision, 4K 60, all the usual stuff, but it costs a little more than the rest of the crowd at around $70 US. To be clear, it could be kinda worth it if you just don't want the hassle of using a dongle to get a USB port. It's got those on board. Ooh, and a 3.5mm audio jack. But just like the TV stick, they put their Xiaomi TV Plus button right where the back button is, so just about every time you're gonna try to do anything, you're gonna accidentally hit it, or at least I would. Thankfully, the interface is stock Google TV. Though, custom UIs on Android aren't always terrible. Just look at Amazon's Fire TV devices, like the Fire TV Stick 4K Max or Fire TV Stick Lite. These ones, not Google certified. They don't use the Google Store, and Amazon has even reportedly been working on their own standalone Fire OS to completely divorce themselves of Google. But for now, they're still Android devices. Unlike everything else we've looked at so far, these are the first to not use Amlogic chips, instead opting for MediaTek's MT8690 line of processors for all of the options cheaper than the Fire TV Cube. What does that mean for the end user? Very little. The Amazon Fire TV Lite is designed to do 1080p video, not 4K. It has a single gig of RAM, 8 gigs of storage, pass-through Atmos support for HDR10+, but no Dolby Vision, Wi-Fi AC, yada yada. It runs Fire OS 7, which is actually Android 9. Okay, that's a yikes. Then the Fire TV Stick 4K Max, now in its second revision as of September 2023, has 2 gigs of RAM, 16 gigs of internal storage, finally. And it's also the only offering we've looked at to support Wi-Fi 6E. On top of that, it supports Atmos, Vision, HDR10+, all the usual things that you'd think it might, and it's on Fire OS 8, which is built on top of the much more current Android 11. Prices on these two are $30 and $60 respectively, which is totally reasonable, but ultimately, the biggest selling feature of the Fire TV lineup is integration with Alexa. So if you're an Alexa household, you go with this, you just take all those ads that Amazon's gonna feed you. Do you want Prime with that? And if you're not an Alexa household, you go with something else. Now you probably noticed we kind of glossed over performance benchmarks here. That's because most people shopping for these things are doing so based on feature set. But that doesn't mean we didn't test them. And the new Fire TV Stick 4K Max ended up leading the pack, with the Xiaomi TV Box S Gen 2 and the Chromecast 4K trailing behind in both single and multi-core Geekbench performance. A more meaningful test, from my point of view though, was our navigation latency test. To be clear, we're still working on methodologies for this kind of stuff, but pressing the right direction button 10 times in Netflix between noon and 2 p.m. on a weekday gave us some rather interesting results. Surprisingly, the TiVo came out on top, with the Chromecast HD, Fire Stick 4K Max, and Chromecast 4K coming in behind. Meanwhile, on all of our tests, the ONN was very middle of the pack. So what's the major takeaway then? Well, first of all, there is no perfect answer under $100. But second of all, the best bang for your buck is the ONN every single time. I mean, for $20, I say take the gamble with it and then give it away if it doesn't fit your use case, or return it with Walmart's generous return policy. Then if that happens and you want something a little more powerful, I'd say the Chromecast 4K or the Fire TV Stick 4K Max are gonna be your best options. We're gonna have links to all of these devices down below. Finally, if you want something experimental but potentially very responsive, the TiVo Stream 4K and executes some interesting ideas, even if they might be a little flawed. Now I'm sure through all of this, some of you are wondering, why don't you just use what's built into your TV? That's a valid question. That's what I do in my family room actually, but there are arguments against it. First of all, not every TV interface is usable. Sometimes they're full of ads and extremely laggy. And some folks also feel that connecting their TV to the internet could make it more susceptible to planned obsolescence in the long term. You see, software updates can bring additional functionality, but they can also roll out in ways that affect your ability to stream content or even affect performance when the manufacturer rolls out additional bloat. With a dongle though, that's not the case, and you can easily replace it once it begins to slow down or once its functionality no longer suits your needs. You know what won't slow down though? This segue to our sponsor! Squarespace. Creating your own website doesn't have to be difficult, and luckily with Squarespace, it isn't. Their all-in-one platform makes it easy to get your website up and running quickly. Designing with their Fluid Engine site builder is a breeze. You just start with a template and customize every detail imaginable with drag and drop technology for desktop or mobile. You can also use their asset library to manage all of your files from one central hub and use them across the Squarespace platform. With Squarespace's analytic insights, you can see what's working well and what needs a little TLC. And if you need help with that, Squarespace has got your back with helpful guides and a 24/7 support team. So head to squarespace.com/LTT and get 10% off today. If you liked this video, check out the time we found potential viruses on sketchy Android TV boxes. These ones, okay to buy. Those ones, ooh.